Welcome to your daily dose of theological German, where a sentence a day keeps the dissertation detractors away and also, in the case of the current series, might leave you feeling very confused. Not, hopefully, about German grammar or syntax or vocabulary or any of the things necessary for successfully reading German, but we have been experiencing a confrontation with the sheer denseness of Tillich's writing. And by dense, of course, I don't mean dim-witted, because of course we are given to understand that Tillich was something of a genius, although for many people that would be impossible to verify since he can be so difficult to understand. But I digress. Let's see what he has for us today. All right, so we have another long sentence here from Tillich today. We'll take it in multiple parts. So from it, it here is the topsoil of cultural creations that we were reading about last time, which we saw Tillich referred to as the objective mind or something like that. So that's what's being referenced here by this pronoun. It is a dative pronoun, but I'm going to say from it, even though normally with a dative pronoun in the absence of a preposition, you might want to say in or to. Here you'll see because of what the verb means, you kind of need to say from. So let's grab the subject, which of course comes right after the verb. So the concrete point of view gathers or extracts from it, from the topsoil of cultural creation in the previous sentence, extracts from it the universal forms of the mental, or something you would have to say if you were going to be really wooden about it. This here you can see is actually a adjective, and you can tell because of this morpheme right here. Geist, of course, is the noun. Geistig is an adjective, which would be spiritual or mental, intellectual, something like that. And yet here, Tillich is using it as if it's a noun. He puts an article here. And of course, it's here functioning like a noun. And so it's like the mental, the spiritual, the intellectual. So I would probably just kind of loosen this up a bit and say something like universal formations of thought or mental formations or something like that. Then we see während. Now this word in German, usually we translate it as while in English, and that word in English and this word in German both are very similar in that they can be either a preposition or a conjunction. In German, if this is a preposition, you should expect to see a dative or a genitive object. In this case, you have a nominative pronoun here, and so that's going to be the subject of this clause. And so you should translate this as some kind of a conjunction. We use while in English like this to make some kind of comparative statement or contrastive statement of some kind. I'm going to say whereas because I think that's a helpful way to get at the sense of the conjunction here. And when you have a clause this long and it's a subordinate clause because of that conjunction, your main verb is typically going to be at the end, and so you want to just go down and find that. I think it's going to make our translating work a little bit easier. And oh, ironically, we have found it, and it is the verb to find. How nice. Okay, so we're going to take that verb and our subject over here, and we're going to go ahead and start translating. So, whereas it finds, it being the concrete point of view or perspective, so it finds from that point of view, always narrower circle and historical repository or holdings of concrete ways of thinking. What does it find? Its own concrete limits. So we'll smooth that out a bit at the end. I do just want to draw your attention to one thing in this clause of particular note because we haven't seen it yet on the channel, and that is this adjective here. Normally when you're looking up an adjective, you'll take off the morphology on the end and kind of look at what's left to sort of try to see if that's something recognizable or something you can look up. If you were to look up Inge in the dictionary, you wouldn't find it. That's not a word. The word here actually is eng, and the reason why you have this extra er in between the word and the morphology that goes on the end of it is because this is actually the comparative form. So just like in English, you can use ER to make a comparative form, so similar in German as well. And so that's why I translated this with narrower, or you could say more narrow or something like that. Here we have another conjunction. So once again, our verb is going to be down at the end of the clause. Schaffen here means to create or something like that. So until it, there's your subject again, until it creates. Let's find the object next until it creates the new individual and unique or uncomparable synthesis of universal form and concrete meaning or content in creative self-establishment. Here, I just want to draw your attention to this word, individual. We've seen this earlier as a kind of a noun. Here, it's an adjective. You can tell because the first letter is not capitalized. And so it's important to recognize that this is part of a list of adjectival modifiers and that your actual noun is synthesis. So it's new, individual, and unique. Individual here being one of the adjectives. Let's go ahead and do this from the beginning to try to get it nice and smooth so we can see what it's really saying. The concrete perspective or point of view takes from it the universal forms of thought. Meanwhile, it finds its own concrete limitations, boundaries, something like that, through the, from that point of view, always more narrow circle and historical repository of concrete ways of thinking until it creates, in a creative act of self-establishment, the new individual and unique synthesis of universal form and concrete content.